The fact that you can obey and disobey shows that God's will is a choice. God can say Paul and Barnabas will walk, and Paul and Barnabas will not make it work. Your marriage, your relationship can be prophesied from the third heavens. If two of you don't come together and want it to work, you will scatter that thing. God can tell you who to marry. Because God said doesn't mean it will be smooth. I don't know if that makes sense. Because I heard from God, because that's another thing that people come and tell me, Pastor, I think I heard wrong. How can God's will be hard like this? What are you saying? Do you know how much Joseph was in God's will? Genesis 15 verse 13. God told Abraham, and he said to Abraham, know certainly that your descendants will be strangers in a land that is not theirs. Which land is he talking about? Egypt. And they will serve them, and they will afflict them 400 years. So when they were selling Joseph, it was God's will. Are you getting what I'm saying? When Potiphar's wife lied, it was God's will. Because there is no other way. Joseph could have had the ears of the king if he didn't meet the chief butler. And the only place he could have met the chief butler was in that prison. So imagine being in God's will because you saw a star. You had a dream and saw a star. That dream now put you inside prison. And you are there for 17 years. And people will think you sinned against God. And it was prophetic design, because 400 years must happen, because God wants to preach a message. I need Passover to happen. If they are not in that Egypt, I can't do that Passover thing. I want it to be obvious that I called my firstborn out of Egypt, all to point to my Christ. And you can look at him and say he's a cursed man. And it was God's will. So because something is God's will doesn't mean that it will be smooth. God's will can come with contention. The will of God is to preach the gospel. The people that first preached it died. You read about Stephen now, didn't you? He died in God's perfect will, and he was stoned to death as a blasphemer. I'm saying that they are killing you because you sinned against God. Meanwhile, you were glorifying God. And that's what I'm trying to help you understand what God's will looks like. Because once people hear is God told me to do it. And some people will deceive you that once there is a vision, there will be provision. It's not true sometimes though. You know, a rhyme, it sounds sweet. Jesus gave people a message and said to them, if they reject you, dust your sandal. How can you send me on an errand and tell me it might not work? He said, if they reject you. So because you are sent, what are we saying? God came from heaven and he was rejected. God is not in God's will. What are we saying here? So if you have that mindset that if I can just hear from God, I can't have problems in my marriage, you are already set up for failure.